On okay, so we started recording. Thanks, Julia. Julia is right on cue. Okay, so let me see if I can share my screen and then we can get started. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this training is called Bulletproofing the Transaction, and that's a very important thing because as real estate agents, we're the front line essentially for the lenders, the lawyers, the builder, the client, and there's a lot dependent on us and sometimes unfairly as well. So in normal times, it's already a lot in terms of what the expectation is, that all sides kind of lean on you and your expertise to help them, not only in their roles, but to make sure that the clients stick with the deals and close out the transaction. In a buyer's market, and I don't know if you guys are experiencing this or have experienced this. Has anybody servicing buyers at the moment or in the last like 30 to 60 days? Anybody gone out with buyers, done some transactions, written offers?
I have, yeah.
Did you find that they were a little bit flaky or nervous or uncertain, doubtful?
Well, yeah, the issue for us is the appraisal is taking really long on the sale of their house.
Okay.
So like when I say long, I mean over 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that's having an impact on their, I guess their appetite in terms of, are they ready to buy? They don't want to be stuck with two houses, even though I told them we'd be conditional anyway. But it's one of those situations where, yeah, they're not as strong about buying, but they're ready to buy. Also,
Okay.
they have a budget based on what they sold their house for, and people are also taking the time, like at least these clients in particular, are taking some time to pay off a couple debts.
Yeah.
With some of the money they made from their house, and also get into another place. So I think the hard part obviously is affordability.
Yeah.
And trying to get in and trying to get in before like rates keep going up and affordability goes down.
Yeah. Okay. Now, is there a need to sell? Like, what's the motivation behind selling?
Definitely, there is a need to sell. They're, in this case, trying to move closer to family, and that's what I'm finding. Like people that are selling, it's like downsizers, a change in family dynamic, closer to job, or something like that. It's more of a function as opposed to a luxury as it was before.
Correct. And that's what you guys will find in a buyer's market is individuals that are going to market right now. There's usually a strong motivation in terms of a need to sell, either as some of the reasons that Chris mentioned, growing families and so forth. It's the mindset around a buyer's market is very different from a seller's market, especially when you're dealing with buyers, and especially when you're dealing with markets like this with rates and uncertainty. So it's really understanding what is going through the mind of purchasers and sellers is very, very important, and it's going to help you guys make sure that transaction gets to the end and it actually closes. So real estate in general is hard. In a buyer's market is even harder because in a seller's market, everybody is excited. It's a weird thing. Buyers are actually more excited in a seller's market than they are in a buyer's market. Do you guys find that to be true from your experiences? Anybody? Don't be shy.
Well, I can't speak from like buyer and seller. I've done leases as of right now, but I can tell the people who are looking to lease the property are definitely excited when they finally get whatever the unit is, because there's so much
options.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is how a buyer's market should be. It should be buyers taking advantage of, essentially it's their turn. In the seller's market, the seller can price however they want to price, ask for no conditions, ridiculous terms, fast closing, ridiculous prices, and they'll get it. So, but buyers seem to want to participate more in that market because, they have FOMO, fear of missing out. And then in a buyer's market where they should be aggressive, they're operating a lot from fear, because nobody wants to buy real estate and then have the price go down the next day, the next month, the next quarter. You know, that's the mindset around buyers. They're not thinking long term. They're not thinking fundamentals. They're not thinking, you know, even though rates are high right now, you know, there's 20% off on the purchase price. You know, I can actually make this work. So it is a bit of an unusual time. To what I've experienced over the course of the summer is, it takes a lot of work to get buyers in the door, and then it takes a lot more work to make sure that buyers actually will close on the deal. Because buyers, from my experience and from what I'm seeing, they want a reason to not close. So, for example, either they'll have conversations with family members, and family members will tell them, you know, no, wait, prices are going to come down another 15 to 20%, you know, because their parent who's a general manager at a auto shop, you know, knows everything about real estate. So they're going to take that person's advice over taking a professional's advice. So you're going to have, it's harder for deals to stick, and you have to navigate it. And sometimes it could be forces external to you. Sometimes, as Chris was saying, could be the appraisal is taking long. So now the appraisal is taking long. Now they're having questions. Well, why is the appraisal taking long? Is the appraisal going to hurt? What if the market's changing? Because in 2 weeks the markets can change. You know, like, am I right? In a span of 2 weeks, we could have the markets go from buyers to balance, balance to sellers, sellers to balance, balance to buyers. So a lot of things can change in a span of 2 weeks, especially if people are relying on the equity of their home to make an exit or to make a move. You know, it's always going to be, it's always going to be difficult navigating the environment as it is, even more difficult navigating with a lot of external forces as well. So know that there is a potential. Can someone put their thing on mute? I'm hearing background noise on someone's line. Not sure what that is. Thank you. Or hello? I don't know who that is.
I think it's Jason. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Jason, if you can put yourself on mute, please. Thank you. So know that your buyers, even if you do get a buyer and you guys do go and you put in an offer on something, you have to make sure that you're on top of everything with that buyer, because the buyer is looking for something, and there are external forces as well that could potentially make sure that this buyer doesn't, scares this buyer more in terms of completing the transaction. So having that mindset going in as you're representing buyers, even if you're the listing agent, know that even if you have an offer, until it's closed, a lot of things could still happen. A lot of things could still go wrong from the time a contract is submitted to when it's closed. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So bulletproofing the transaction, what does that mean? It means the skills and knowledge necessary to learn how to close out both ends of the sales transaction. A lot of times if you're the listing agent, you kind of just focus on what your duties are as the listing agent. If you're the buyer agent, no one's really involved or thinking too much about what's going on the listing side. But it's in everybody's best interest to make sure that these transactions close. In a market like this, where it's a buyer's market, and it will probably be a buyer's market, into 2023, depending on the area, of course. It's very, very important for you guys to learn how to work both ends of the transactions, not just your end of the transaction, or not just working it to make sure that you yourself get compensated. Because at times, like if you're doing assignment sales, for example, we usually pay out assignment sales before closing. Right now, I'm trying to close 2 assignment sales that I've already been compensated for over 3 months ago, but it's still in my best interest to make sure that I'm on top of what's going on to make sure that these transactions close out this month. So learning how to work both ends of the transaction is very, very important. And that's how it gives you a better chance to to make sure that you bulletproof the transaction so nothing goes wrong.
Well,
So,
Mike, if I may say
Yeah.
something, I was dealing with that in a previous, like a transaction I'm dealing with right now,
Mhm.
where the buying agent is actually related to the buyers.
Okay.
And I was following up with the conditions. I'm trying to find out what's going on with this mortgage financing. Why isn't it being waived? What's going on? They
Yep.
said the appraiser's coming out. They're not coming. The seller has to have the house clean. And the guy's like, oh, I don't know. We can't get a hold of them. And I said, man, got to pick up the phone, give them a call. You got to get involved. You got to, you
Yeah.
can't just wait around. I go, these guys, they probably have lots of business, or, everybody's sitting around waiting. Guys, come on, let's get active. And, sometimes people need a little push
Yeah.
to do so, obviously in a respectful way, because you don't want to insult anybody. But you need to push these transactions along because there's so many people involved, from the mortgage broker or the bank or the underwriter or the appraiser. Everybody takes their time. So if you're not pushing them along, doesn't matter which side you're representing, then you have to deal with the emotions on the other side that look unmanaged. And because you're the representative, it falls on you.
100%. And a lot of times nobody reads the contracts. Because I mean, before, when people were receiving physical contracts and they were physically signing and physically initialing, they would go through page to page, line item to line item. Now, because everything is DocuSign and Authentisign, I mean, most of your clients are not reading what they're signing. They just click, 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 submit, and then they'll come back and they'll say, oh wait, there's a condition. Oh wait, once this is the closing date, oh, I still have to waive this, I still need to do this, I still need to bring deposits. So it's very important that just because a contract is signed and it's submitted, it doesn't mean that they've submitted it to their lawyer, they've submitted it to their lender, they've taken the next steps that are necessary to prepare the deposits. So you need to always be involved and know, what could potentially go wrong, because a lot of things could go wrong. So there's 4 different mindsets to it, right? Number one is nothing can go wrong, which is a very naive and amateur place to be. And that's, for the people that don't respond to emails and phone calls and texts, and they just kind of just, I've submitted the offer, now it's the bank's job, now it's the lawyer's job. Those people are setting themselves up for a failure. Anything can go wrong. That's usually the mindset that I take, is anything can go wrong as soon as it leaves my hand, because once it leaves my hand, I don't know what else is going on, especially if I'm working with a team that I've never worked before. So if I'm representing a buyer and they want to work with their own mortgage professional who is their cousin, and I really hate doing that a lot when I have to work with family members, or when people are related, because I find the professionalism drops by quite a bit. The professionalism drops by quite a bit if the husband is the mortgage broker, or the cousin is the lawyer. The communication and professionalism definitely drops by quite a bit. So you need to be aware of these things, right? Something can go wrong. I've never actually had I think maybe in all the transactions I've done, I've had maybe less than 3% where absolutely nothing went wrong. Something is always going to be dropped. And in a market like this with buyers, because when you're in a seller's market, I mean, there's really no conditions. So who cares about an appraisal? Who cares about an inspection? Who cares about if a status condition review comes in? Um, the deal is firm, and it's going to close fairly quickly. In a buyer's market, these deals are usually longer. These deals are conditional on you selling your primary residence. As Chris had mentioned, these deals are conditional on finance, inspection, and any other contingencies that the buyer essentially wants to put in. So you have to be aware of all these things and on what all these deadlines are, because problems will come, and it's definitely more frequent in a buyer's market. Any questions
Actually,
on that?
I just want to say one more thing. A funny problem occurred because clients sold their house and we're going to look and buy a place, and we're ready to submit an offer. And I'm going through how much do you want to put? Is this price good? This is what I'm recommending. And then this is what I'm recommending for deposit. And they said, oh, we don't have the deposit. The money's in the house. So
Exactly.
now we're in a situation where they don't have a deposit to buy their new house, and their mortgage broker is recommending to have to sell this current place and then, I guess rent until until they get the money out and buy.
How long is the closing?
60 days.
60 days? So they don't want to wait 60 days to get the funds in hand?
They can, but where are they going to live?
Well, hold on, but the closing is not for 60 days.
Couldn't
but
they
you're saying
get a line of
the interim.
credit?
Pardon?
Couldn't they get a line of credit from the,
I mean, I guess they're gonna have to look for that option, right?
It's shocking, right? Like, hold on, we need a deposit to buy a house. It's actually quite incredible, the things that you sometimes learn from individuals as you go through buying and selling processes. So especially in a market like this, there's a few issues that it's important to know. These are the major ones, and being aware of it will definitely make this process a lot easier, right? So number one is inspection and repairs. So, a lot of times when new buyers occupy properties, like they want to go and nitpick at every single little thing. They'll get the keys to the new property and there's a scratch on the wall, and they want to call the real estate agent or they want to call a lawyer to say, hey, I just moved in and there's a scratch on the wall. Like, can I get compensated for it? Now, with those types of issues, I usually like to push it to a lawyer, because I mean, unless it's a material item, something structural, something that is quite dangerous. For the most part, I just myself like to just push it to the lawyers. But inspections in general could create issues, because if you're buying a property for $800,000 and now we have inspections that are happening, we go to the inspection, we see, hey, the furnace needs to be replaced, the roof is quite old and it's quite aged and it's going to probably need replacing in about 2 years. You're gonna have to, number one, you should all be going to all the inspections with your clients. That's very, very important. If you're not doing so already, you should definitely be going to all the inspections with your clients, not letting the inspector themselves go alone with the clients. Some places won't even give the inspectors access to the unit. They'll only give the access to the real estate agent. So inspections, you have to be going to the inspections with the client. Note what the repairs are. Always get an estimate of what those costs and repairs are, could potentially be from the home inspector report. And then, you could potentially, you don't want to lose a deal because you sent the inspector to go to the property with the clients alone, and the inspector says something that scares the clients, and now they want to walk away from the deal. So, especially when you're dealing with homes that are, 15 years plus, you're always going to get some kind of issue with it. Appraisals, we kind of all know. In a seller's market, there really isn't any time to do appraisals. So bank will, for the most part, what I've seen is, in a seller's market, the banks will just give you the appraisal of whatever the offer amount is. They'll just, because they just want to get the business done, and they know if they don't get it done, another lender will get it done. So appraisals in a seller's market don't exist. Appraisals in this kind of market do exist. And sometimes, I've had to work deals after appraisals where the only way to save the deal is maybe the seller agrees to come down 30,000 in cost, and then I agree to take off maybe a quarter percent in commissions, to make it work. So, there's all these things are potential pitfalls that could happen in your businesses. And, sometimes I like to go and be present when the appraiser is also present, because I want to know, what are they competent with? What are they doing the comparables with? I've actually had times when I've gotten the name of the appraisal company that's coming, and I'll call the bank and I'll say, I need another appraisal done, because I know this appraisal company usually always comes in very conservative. And then I'll say, well, let's get the report first. The report will come in, and then sure enough, because I've worked with that appraisal company before, a new appraisal will need to be done. So don't be afraid to have to, if you don't agree with the appraisal amount, get another appraisal done. Now, the second appraisal will cost money. The first one is typically free. The second one will cost money. And your buyers and yourselves, you guys can determine, who's going to expense that. But again, these are all things that are important to make sure that the deal finishes and it gets done in time, especially in the market that we're starting to enter into, and we're probably going to be in 2023. Any questions before I move on to the next one, or comments? Okay, so moving on. So funding is obviously the name of the game, especially if someone is bringing their team of mortgage professionals and you've never worked with them and everything. You need to make sure that you have what the contact number is for that lender, because a lot of times buyers will lie. They'll say, you know what, I'm pre-approved, Folu, I'm pre-approved for $1 million. Let's start looking at properties. And naturally, you're going to get excited because, they've done some kind of legwork. But then once you submit that offer and, and it's time to get funding, and then you have to now talk to the lender, then you find out, well, it wasn't really $1 million. It was $1 million if they got a co-signer, or it was $1 million if they paid off X amount of debt, and so forth. And you start to learn new things and so forth that unveil themselves. And all these things are, they happen in a regular market, but they're going to happen more frequently in a buyer's market, where individuals just, they feel confident, they're giving you bits and bits of information, but they're not giving you all the information as well. So very important for you to be in touch with their lenders, in touch with their mortgage professionals. Let them know that you're the agent, because you're going to have to give them correspondence anyways. You're going to have to send them the listing agreements. You're going to have to send them a whole bunch of documents and so forth. To send them a whole bunch of stuff. So don't trust that they have this figured out because they said they do, or because they say they do. So a lot of times buyers just lie. They just want to just get started, or they're overconfident in their ability to maybe pay off $100,000 of credit cards and lines of credit in a short amount of time. But just make sure you have an extra set of eyes on all these steps. Other contingencies could be, a status certificate review, or maybe they want to do an inspection with rodents, if it's a place that they're maybe nervous about. If it's a place that they're maybe nervous about rodents, or maybe they're nervous about, soil samples, or maybe they're, it's a, they have a well or a septic tank, there's other contingencies that could be added onto the agreement. The more contingencies that are added on, the more involved you need to be in the process, just because there's milestones that people can just miss and just forget. Point number 5 is probably my most important point, which is the cooperating agent. A lot of times, unless you've worked with an agent before, in this industry, it seems big because, 60,000 agents in Ontario. But once you start to get into it, especially if you start to specialize or really focus on certain neighborhoods, you really see there's a certain amount of names that just keep coming up in certain communities. So if you want to specialize in Mississauga, Oshawa, or in these pockets, you're going to run into the same teams and the same realtors the longer you do this and the deeper you get into this. So you're going to run into people, and you're going to right away know who you trust, and you don't have to kind of overlook their work. And then there's other people that you do need to, it's sometimes you have to work for, if you're the listing agent, you have to work for the cooperating buyer as well, because they might just have hired someone that is little experience, or somebody who's maybe has a lot on their plate, and they don't have time to check, all their, dot all their I's and cross all their T's. So they might just be busy and they just let things go. But cooperating agents lose deadlines, or they don't know what the next steps are, or they don't know how to keep their clients on board. That's why it's important, especially when you have listings. At the end of every single showing, to get on the phone with a cooperating agent or the person who brought the buyers, and to give them a phone call and say, hey, how was the showing? How did it go? Any feedback from your buyers? And they might come and they might say, hey, you know what? We were there, and we found out that there was no concierge on site, or we couldn't find the parking, or we couldn't get access to parking and locker. And because of that, we want to, we don't want to, we don't want to keep moving forward with this deal, especially in the buyer's market. If things don't go 100% smooth, maybe they couldn't get into the building, because the lockbox is in an area that they couldn't find, and they were trying to call the office and they couldn't get a hold of someone in the office or the agent. Like, a lot of things could go on from when a buyer makes a request to go see a property to when they go see the property. They might never actually go into it for whatever reasons. So just having a line of communication with a cooperating agent and making sure the cooperating agent also knows what their deadlines are, as well, is very, very important, because a lot of times, you're gonna have to step in and out to work with those agents, and to help them help their clients to maybe answer questions that they didn't have the answers to.
Also, Mike, I wanted to jump in
Yeah.
here and say something really quick. I ran into a situation where I was listing a property and there were no neighbors behind. The 403 ran behind the house, and you don't really notice it when you're living there. But okay, fine. If you come there and you're listening for it, you might hear it. So the cooperating broker wouldn't know that. So putting notes or giving them a call ahead of time, just prepping them really, for whatever special thing you want them to know about the house can go a long way.
That's right. That's right. Very good. And again, especially if you know that the house, the home, or the property has unique characteristics that, like they might have a heated driveway, for example. I mean, that would be in the listing. But they might come to the show and then there's pure snow on the ground. I'm like, I thought this person had and maybe it was getting service that week. So, having that conversation with these individuals, especially for unique characteristics, is also very important. And then, of course, deadlines. You don't want to miss deadlines. And you don't want to make sure that the other party also doesn't miss deadlines. So, I've had, especially when I deal with more complex deals, like when you're dealing with assignment sales, for example, and you're dealing with 3 different lawyers, the lawyer for the seller, the lawyer for the buyer, and the lawyer for the vendor. I've had times where the communication breaks down so much and it's so poor that the only way that I send emails is I CC all 3 lawyers, I CC all the agents, any law clerk that's involved, I CC the builder's rep, and I get an email thread going on so that nobody misses anything. Especially when, because missing deadlines are very expensive. I'm dealing with a scenario right now. It's costing us $1,000 a day, for missing a deadline. So you don't want to be in a situation where no one's paying attention, or, oh, I thought that you were going to do it. Like, you hear that a lot in our industry. Oh, I thought that this person was going to send you the contract, or I thought that the appraisal was already done. Like, people think a lot, and sometimes, they just don't read the agreements, and it's unbelievable sometimes. So making sure that the deadlines are very critical, and they can be very expensive. Now, who's responsible for it? I always take on that I'm the realtor, but I'm essentially responsible for all these 6 items that could go wrong. Now, to what degree I want to take it on, that is up to me, and that is up to you. To what degree that you want to take that on. But at the end of the day, it's always important to inspect everything that you expect. So, but if you take it on as, hey, it's important for me to know what all these items are, you have a greater chance of making sure that these deals are sealed tight, they're bulletproof, and they have, things could still go wrong, but the likelihood is far less. And another important thing, once you do hit problems, which you eventually will, you have to right away be able to communicate with the lender, the clients, the lawyer, to focus on solutions right away, not to focus on whose fault it was and who didn't do what they were supposed to do and who messed up. The quicker you can focus on, okay, what's the next step? What's the solution? How do we get this thing done? Sometimes you can get funding. I've had times where we've had funding, we waive financing a week until closing, a week until closing, funding is revoked. Funding is revoked because the client went and bought a car, went and made a big purchase, brought down their credit score. The bank just through due diligence went to do a, just to reassess the loan, and now they find out, this person's credit is lower, their debt income ratio is lower, they can't fund the deal, and then they pull out. So even though funding is done and you've met the deadlines and you've done everything that you're supposed to do on your end, things could still happen, but you have to make sure that you're coaching buyers all the time and you're on top of buyers all the time. Don't make big purchases. Don't do anything that's, I just had a client call me. She has a closing end of this month, and she wanted to make some kind of ridiculous purchase. Thankfully, she reached out to me first before she made the purchase, and I just had to call her and say, "Are you insane? your deal's not closed." So if she had done that, I forgot what she wanted to buy, but if she had done that, funding would have been removed, and then we would have gone back to, even though all the proper steps were taken to make sure these things don't occur, things could still happen at the end. It's very important to just always have a constant line of communication with your clients. It's very, very important. Signs of a buyer's market. These are things that we discussed, I think, a couple of trainings ago, but good to just have a recap. VTB, we haven't seen them yet, but I believe in certain markets we're going to start to see them. So these are vendor takebacks. This is just simply another way of saying, creative financing, alternative financing. The seller themselves will be involved in funding the deal. So maybe the bank will finance 80%. The seller will do a vendor take back of 10%, and then the client will bring 10% in the form of a deposit. So we haven't seen these yet, and I haven't seen them in the markets that I've serviced and worked, but I'm pretty sure these will be coming very soon, especially with another rate hike just taking place yesterday. When you're looking, and I believe there's ways you can do this search on MLS. You can search keywords on MLS that you want to pop up. So for example, motivated seller. If you type that in, you can go in an area and you can see all the listings that have motivated seller written in it. So, obviously a lot of times they're in the broker remarks, so you'll be able to see it there. So motivated seller, that little tagline tells you that this person is ready to make a deal. These are good signs, maybe not of a buyer's market, but your a buyer is going to be able to reap and be able to capitalize and, get a good deal. Especially in the buyer's market, people always, that's probably one of the most terrible phrase that I hear is everybody says, okay, I want to buy something, but it needs to be a good deal. It needs to be a good deal. Like whatever that means, right? Good deal is relative to, I guess, what your neighbor got 2 months ago. Anything today in my head is a good deal, but that good deal, what they usually are looking for is signs of something like this. Increased commissions. I have a listing, I have a personal listing of mine that I just bumped the commission up by 0.25%. And usually I find that will always get realtors in the door. The realtors we are greedy people. So, a chance to get an extra $1,000, $3,000 on the same transaction, we'll at least take a look at the opportunity. So, keep an eye out on the co-oping commissions. They might say things like extra bonus, 2.5%, or things like seller will pay closing costs. So these are all signs of a buyer's market and a sign of your client, potentially being able to get a good deal. When you're on an MLS listing, there's a tab called, let me see if I can find it on here. There's a tab called View History. Have anybody used that function before or know what I'm talking about? The View History. So let me take a property, random property. Yes, all the time. Okay, Jason does. So there's a tab in MLS called View History, which is a very interesting tab because you can see pretty much all the activities that have happened with that property. And then there's another one next to it. I forgot what it is, but you can click on it, and you can see all the changes that the listing agent has done since they posted the listing. So, what have they changed? What have they recently changed? Those two tabs are very, very important in a market like this to be able to kind of see, where's the mindset of the seller at? What are they looking? What have they been doing with this property over the course of the last 3 months, 6 months? Maybe they started, with their asking price at $2 million. Then they dropped it to 1.8, then 1.7. Then they put it on the market to rent. Then they put it back on the market for sale. These are all important things for you to be able to look at, and then reach out to the agent, to the listing agent, and say, hey, there's a lot of activity and back and forth on this property. Is like, what does your client really want to do with this? Call that agent, get a story, and see why, there's so much activity. See, the activity makes sense. But if the activity doesn't make sense, like right now, you have a lot of sellers that want to be temporary landlords because the markets are because they're not able to get the number that they want to get. So they're putting a lot of their properties on the market for lease, but those leases are going to be only good for 12 months, because after 12 months, they're most likely going to kick that person out. So if you're somebody who's representing tenants and you're representing a lot of tenants, what I would always do before I take my potential tenant buyer is I look at the history of the property to see if 3 months ago it was posted for sale. Because if it was posted for sale, there's a good chance that at the end of that 12 months, that tenant might need to move again. So if you're representing a tenant in a market like this, what I always suggest to do, and obviously have this conversation with the tenant, is number one, check the history of the property to make sure like it's a real landlord, not just like a temporary landlord. Number two, put a 2-year lease, not a 1-year lease. Because I find most tenants are going to be there for at least 2 years. They're not going to be at a property for a year. 12 months goes by really, really quickly. So most tenants I find are going to be in a property for at least a period of 2 years. So at least they can lock in 2 years on the lease and lock the landlord's hand. So if the market changes in 12 months, the landlord is not kicking them out and putting them on the street for them to try to sell. And then now the tenant has to go back out to try to find another property, and most likely they're going to be paying 15 to 20% more than what they have. So as if you're representing a lot of tenants, try to get a 2-year clause in there. That will go a long way, and explain to them why, and that will just solidify what that tenant believed in terms of hiring you as a professional, but that was the right thing for them to do. Flexibility. So these are also good signs of a buyer's market where before, the sellers want to get their money ASAP, right? They want to get it yesterday. So if you are able to, if you sense that there's a lot of flexibility with the terms, the closing date, the conditions, because that agent is just maybe they're also frustrated. They want to. When you have a listing, the most important thing is to get the listing off your books so you can move on. You don't want to have a listing and then you're getting calls from your clients every other day. Hey, so what's going on? So how much traffic? So what have you done? So have you done open houses? Can we do more open houses? Did you follow up with, you don't want clients to start micromanaging you when you have a listing. So having conversations with listing agents, you can learn quite a bit. If that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from today, is have a conversation with those listing agents, because they could be on the verge of being fired, right? So they want to get a deal done just as much as your client and yourselves want to get the deal done. Any questions here? Okay, so let's move on now. This is a market that greatly benefits move-up buyers. as well. First time home buyers, I mean, I don't know how to say it. My experience with first time home buyers is a bit painful, because there's so much emotions that they go into with this process, that most of them should have. And it's even worse when they had the capability to buy 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they're just sitting on the fence and just waiting. The best experience that you'll have right now is going to be also with move up buyers, because they can really capitalize, as Chris is going through, and as maybe some of you are going through. This is an example of $200,000, but the dollar amount doesn't matter. You can, when you have a chance, go put in the numbers in your area to see how this works. So if markets have dropped 5%, let's say year over year, who knows what the year over year market status is in the GTA? Are prices up or prices down? Like, what's the year over year status currently? So what were prices at in September 2021 compared to September 2022? If anybody had to guess, are they up or are they down? There's no wrong answer. I just want to see what do you guys think has been happening? Down? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so because this is everybody's scared to get the wrong answer. The prices are actually up 1% year over year. So if you bought a property last year, August, to this year, August, prices are up 1%. Now, people have been focused on where the market has been from the peak, which is February 2022 till now. February 2022 till now, markets are down. September numbers, I made a mistake. September numbers are not in yet, but if you look, because August numbers are now in, if you look August 2021 to August 2022, markets are actually still up. So if we look year over year with this example, let's assume that markets are going to be down by the end of this year. Let's say by the end of this year, markets will be down 5%. So let's go with this number. So if your home price was 190,000, markets are down 5%. Your home is now worth 190,000. Because we're in Toronto, just put an extra zero to that. So if your home is worth $2 million and is down 5%, your home is now worth 1,900,000. For some of you who it's easier to kind of work with numbers that you understand, which means it's a $10,000 loss if you were to sell your house today. Now, if you were to buy another house and move up, with that purchase, assuming that you have the deposit already in hand, not waiting on this house to be able to cash in your deposit, to be able to make a deposit. And if this same house as well, if the price is down 5%, that's a $20,000 savings. So you're going to lose $10,000 here in the sale of your house, but you're gonna save $20,000 on the purchase of this house. So you're up $10,000. So you've had a gain of $10,000 by being a move up buyer. So you can crunch these types of numbers with, in your area, in the areas that you want to work in, or even with your discussions with clients. So clients will probably say something like, prices are down 15%, 20%, and they're just pulling numbers out of thin air, because those numbers aren't real year over year. If they're looking at maybe from the peak of the market till now, do the analysis for that area. But being able to do a transition, so I have a couple of buyers right now that we're looking at making a move like this because it makes sense, and having a mortgage team behind you as well that can communicate this to them. And show them that yes, you are going to lose a little bit here, but you're going to make that back up on this end, especially when you're moving up in products. If you're going from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, man, you're gonna make your money. You're gonna make your money and grow your money so much faster by moving up in terms of the product that you're moving up from. So if you're going from 2-bedroom condo to a townhouse to a detached, this is the time to make that move, even with the loss that you'll be taking at the moment. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions, comments? Or is this just straight BS as well? You can just say that as well. No? Okay, let's move forward. So we're almost done. Last but not least, pre-construction. I'm going to talk a little bit about Lakeview. This is on Lakeshore, sorry, south of Lakeshore in Mississauga between Cawthron and Dixie. This right here is the entire site plan, including this pier as well. So this entire landscape right here is the entire site plan. I think we had tried out a few weeks ago, come in and talk about this. I've been at the sales center pretty much for the last 30 days. I've been there every single week, been going there with buyers just to kind of get more information. And I love pre-con in a market like this because there's a lot of people that, are just not gonna buy today, and they're just not ready. They don't want to take on the risk. Even though prices are down, with interest rates being so high up, maybe they can't afford the cash flow, to be able to, maybe they can't afford the extra cash flow that it takes to get into a property today. So pre-con is a great sell for that because it's going to be built in the future. It's not going to be ready for, 4 years minimum if it's a condo, 2 years minimum if it's a single dwelling like a townhouse or a single. But we don't, Ontario doesn't build, or the GTA, they don't, like, we don't build singles and we don't build townhouses because it's a waste of land. So you're not going to see a lot of freehold products being built over the next 10 years in the GTA because, everything favors density at the moment. So you're going to see a lot of products. If you do want those kind of products, you definitely have to go a little bit further out. So pre-con makes the most sense for me in terms of being able to have a client make gradual deposits, having an area where you're going to see future growth, especially for a project like this. This is going to be under construction for the next 10 years. For those of you that, have been involved with maybe Dreammaker, or, you've seen other master plan communities develop over the last 10, 15 years, obviously the most major and the biggest transformations would be Regent Park, or maybe Park Lawn and Lakeshore. Those are probably the two most transformative areas over the last 15 years, in the GTA in terms of density. So, and everybody who's been involved in those projects or lives in those areas or has friends and families in those areas, when you get in phase, excuse me, when you get in phase one, before all the other phases begin to launch, that is when you're going to make the most money. If you come in phase 2 or phase 3 of a 10-phase project, you'll obviously make money as well. But where you're going to maximize the return is by being able to be there and be involved with it, from phase 1. So this is a great project at $1,200 per square foot. Occupancy is also not till 2028. So my investment philosophy is always, if I had a client with $200,000 today, or even $100,000 today, my first step with them will be to buy resale, because resale, the prices are down and so forth. If they can't get resale done today for whatever reason, then the next best option for them is to buy pre-con. At least they can participate in the market, make gradual deposits, get a product that they know is going to appreciate in value. And once that community is built up and transformed, there's going to be a lot of equity realized as well. Any questions about the Lakeview project? For some of you that weren't on the call with Tridel, there's a recording for that call, so you can go back and you can watch it if you want to get all the details. Actually, well, it's not even all the details. And to be honest, floor plans and price sheets are not even released yet. They'll be released next week, I believe Wednesday or Thursday. And they already have over 400 worksheets for phase one, and phase one is only about 400 doors. And most of the demand is in the $2 million to $4 million range, which is the units with the massive terraces, south views, unobstructed views. Those are actually the products that are in the most high demand, because a lot of residents that live in the area have a lot of equity in their homes, and they're looking to downsize and move to a community that has pretty much every single thing that you can think of in this community. There's the product point that I want to push investors in is that 1+Den 2 washroom product, which is about 750 to 780,000. Tridell's not building any micro units here, so meaning there's no units in this project that is less than 500 square feet. So the smallest product in this community is 600 square feet, which I also like because there's not going to be a lot of investors in there. There's going to be predominantly end users in there, and products that usually have end users, in my opinion, always do better over time, because because end users care for the product and they care for the community. Whereas investors, if they're just buying products that they just want to be, to turn them into rentals, there's little care, there's little focus. So this is phase one. Phase one is at 1,200 per square foot started. I believe phase two will be at different developers, but they'll probably launch at about 1,400 a square foot, which, if you think about for a product that's going to be ready in 2028, even if you do the most conservative numbers in terms of price appreciation of, let's say, 3% a year over the next 6 years, which is how long this project will take to complete. And part of the reason why it will take so long to complete is because the city of Mississauga needs to build the infrastructure around it. So they're going to be building roads first. They're going to be building infrastructure for the LRT, bike trails, and so forth. So they want to build up the infrastructure first before they start the construction of the condos and the townhouses to be built up in the area. So that's part of the reason why the project has the time span that it does. Because typically, 6 years is a long time. But those of you that have worked with projects like Nobu, Nobu is like 6 years in, and just, I think, approaching registration right now. Any questions on the Lakeview project, or on the terms or anything like that? No? Okay. So remember, final remarks before closing. You're responsible to ensure closing. Number two, manage the expectations and inspect everything you expect. Know that, just because it is a buyer's market doesn't mean that you're going to go, or your clients are going to go in and they're going to put an offer $200,000 below asking. Like, that's not how a buyer's market works. Time is of the essence. Pay attention to the deadlines, and make sure that you're not missing them, but also make sure that the cooperating agent is also on top of it and not missing it. And finally, because markets do change, week over week, month over month, it's important to price ahead of the market. Now, what does that mean? It obviously means different things for different markets, and for different products as well. So right now I have a listing. I have my own personal listing, and I'm priced high. Now, why am I priced high? Because I believe that this interest rate hike is going to be the last one. And A and B, we're now in the fall, which is when buyers are coming back and they're more active. Summer's done, kids are in school. People typically like to enjoy their summers. They don't want to talk real estate in the summertime. But as soon as Labor Day is done and the weather starts to cool off, people start to realize it's September, the year is almost done. I need to, do something or change something to meet and achieve the goals that I've set out for myself in the beginning of the year, before the year is done. So the mindset changes changes a little bit at least. So price ahead of the market, ahead of the product. If you're putting products on the market right now, we can have a discussion about it just to make sure that you're pricing accordingly as well. So typically, everybody likes to look at comparables. Comparables is not the only thing you should be looking at right now when you're pricing. So you shouldn't only be looking at, what happened in the last 30 days, the last 60 days. It's important to look ahead. What could potentially happen now that rates, just went up another 0.75 basis points? What's going to potentially happen now that the rental market is up 30% year over year? What does that mean for buyers and potentially for us? What does that mean for also sellers as well? So knowing all these things are very, very important before you price an item. Other than that, keep all those things in mind, and you'll have a greater chance in terms of, being able to start that transaction and also close that transaction as well. So that is it. Any comments, questions? No? Everybody's good? Well, with that being said, we're going to conclude today's training. For those of you that want more information, maybe on pre-construction or on the Tridel trainings, reach out to Natasha if you don't have access already to all the past trainings and all the past videos as well, and she'll be able to share that with you. This is the last. Also, another last thing that's important to remember. All the money that you are going to make this year in 2022, you have potentially another 30 to 60 days to work that deal. What I find typically is after Thanksgiving, people now start to get into Christmas mode right away. Christmas mode, just, I don't know what it is. It starts earlier and earlier every single year. So either people have work functions, work parties, work events, and they're trying to squeeze in a whole bunch of different stuff for the year. And typically most transactions from start to finish, from engagement with a client to transaction close, that period takes about 60 to 90 days. So from, just by going through due process. So if you're doing a work right now with a client, you're potentially looking at a runway till the end of November at best. After that, the year is a wrap. So for all of you that have goals, milestones that you want to reach still for the year, and you want to know maybe how you can potentially still do it and still hit it, maybe your goal is to cap before the end of the year and you haven't done so yet. Maybe your goal is, is to break 6 figures, maybe for the first time, or, maybe the goal is to just get 1, 2, or 3 more transactions in. Could be maybe, 2 to 3 more leases. And the fact that leases are up 20 to 30% year over year, I mean, you could do 3 to 4 leases and still come out making about $10,000 extra before the year is done, just from handling handling a few leases from now until the end of the year. So keep that in mind, that your window to really hit your milestones is very, very short. You have about 60 days to go out there to work the plan, to work, with buyers, with the buyers that you do have in your pipelines. Reach out to them. This is the time to get them over the fence, answer those questions and uncertainties that they might have about interest rates going up, if it makes sense to sell and to buy, assess those situations. And if you need help to have another set of eyes on it, definitely let us know and we'll be able to assist. Other than that, have a good rest of your week and we will talk to you soon. Take care.